I am so tired. Huff. Dennis slumped on the classroom desk he was sitting on and said in a tired tone. Lith and Ralph nodded their heads, agreeing with Dennis. They too were tired, not physically but mentally. The classes were too exhausting and most importantly, boring. They had 4 two-hour lectures and only one 15-minute break after the first 2 lectures. Because all 4 classes were theory-based, everyone was required to sit and listen to the instructors. The trio had to attend general classes like these at least once a week, and today was that day. Even though they were bored to tears by it, they were helpless and couldn't skip them. I am hungry. I need food. Dennis said while being in the same slumped position. I am hungry too. The cafeteria is near. Let's go there. Lith added from the side. Ralph, like usual, didn't speak much and simply nodded his head, indicating his approval. The 3 got up and left for the cafeteria present on the ground floor of the main building. The main building had 50 floors, among which 25 floors had classrooms. The rest of the floors were for miscellaneous purposes, such as some had a library, some specimen rooms, some practical labs, etc. The cafeteria was present on the ground floor. It had many counters, tables and chairs. With various types of students coming to hang out over here, it was built pretty huge to accommodate everything. There were myriad types of food available. Students and staff alike could purchase them via their monthly credits. There was free food available as well, but although limited in variety, it was still as delicious as the food that costs money. Abalak's World Academy provided the best things to their students, and food being an important resource to everyone, they naturally didn't sting on it either. A few people noticed the trio as soon as they reached the cafeteria. From these few, the word spread to the others, and within a few seconds, everyone's gazes were on the trio. The 3 ignored the people's gazes and went to one of the counters, where Dennis ordered an extra large bowl of ramen along with a side of carriage. His choice of food is influenced by the anime he watches, with carriage and ramen being mentioned quite a few times in it. Ralph got himself a few pieces of French toast with powdered sugar, a chocolate-filled croissant and an extra large mango milkshake. He never mentioned it, but from the food he always had, Lith and Dennis deduced that Ralph had a sweet tooth. He hardly ate things which weren't sweet, with his beverages being sweet. Sweet too. Thus, Lith found no problems with the food here. He was actually a bit excited about the food present here, as back on Earth, he was from a middle-class family, so he hardly ever got the chance to try out various other cuisines present. However, it was a different case now. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, all thanks to his mother. He was the vampire prince, and being from the clan that ruled all over an entire main race, he was filthy rich. Though that was the case, he wasn't a wastrel. He hardly used the wealth he had. In the academy too, he didn't need to use money at all. He was a topper, so everything was free. This was one of the merits of being a topper. Ralph and Dennis had everything for free as well, so they didn't need to waste their monthly credits on it too. Taking their food, the trio went to a table nearby and seated themselves on the chairs attached to it. Putting a piece of carriage in his mouth, Dennis exclaimed happily while chewing it, "Man, this fried chicken is so nice. Ralph, you should try it." "Idiot, close your mouth and finish your food first before speaking," Ralph said, knitting his brows, and took a sip of his mango milkshake. Lith didn't join in on their conversation and got busy eating the bowl of biryani present. He was eating it with his hands and took a sip of soft drink present in between. Everyone present in the cafeteria paid the utmost attention to what the toppers were doing. Looking at the food they were having, some of them went ahead and ordered the same thing. "Nya, can you believe it? Lord Ralph is drinking a milkshake, hehehe." A girl from the cat tribe of the Beastkin said excitedly and wagged her tail. "What's there to believe? It's normal. Can Lord Ralph not even have a milkshake now?" A werewolf girl replied nonchalantly to the cat girl. "Nya, I wish I was the food on Lord Ralph's table, Naya, haha." The cat girl said happily. "You idiot cat. Watch your foul mouth," the werewolf girl replied. Such a conversation happened at many places, and such lewd talks were done only for Ralph, as the ones who liked Lith talked about how they would kidnap him, then protect and cherish him due to how pretty and innocent he looked. As for Dennis, he was once again foreshadowed due to the weaker and younger girls lusting over Ralph and the older and stronger girls fawning over Lith. Meanwhile, at another table in the cafeteria, a human girl said to her human boyfriend present beside her, Look, how handsome and dashing Lord Ralph is. If only I could spend a day and night with him, my life would be complete. Ah, how I wish I could be the one Lord Ralph is having in his mouth." The human boy gritted his teeth and slammed the table in anger, shocking his girlfriend. He couldn't take it anymore. Ever since his girlfriend saw Ralph, she has been head over heels for him. Had it not been for Ralph being out of reach for her, she would have already broken up with him. The boy knew about this and felt like a loser in front of his own girlfriend. He couldn't take it anymore. He got up from his seat and began walking towards where the trio were sitting. As he walked, he thought, "I really do not believe that you can be stronger than me by a whole level. We are all elites of the world and got into this academy because we are strong. You may be strong, but I don't think by a huge margin. I'll defeat you today, Ralph Asmodeus, and show my girlfriend and the whole world that you aren't as great as what they make you out to be." Previous chapter. Next chapter. Lith, Ralph and Dennis were having their food, enjoying each other's company, oblivious to everyone's gazes. They were having a good time together, but paused when they sensed a blonde-haired, brown-eyed teen walking towards them. The three could sense clear hostility directed towards them, but instead of taking any action, they waited further to see what the guy would do. They weren't worried about anything as the guy seemed to be in their year. They could tell via the tie he was wearing. The first years wore blue tie, green for second years, yellow for third, red for fourth and purple for fifth years. It would be a little troublesome if such hostility came from a fourth or a fifth year student. The three of them were at rank 2, while the fourth and fifth years were generally at rank 4 or 5. Though Lith could win against rank 4, fighting against a rank 5 would be troublesome for even him. But, since the guy walking towards them was only a first-year student, they chose to ignore it. They thought of him as nothing but a minor inconvenience. The human boy walked and came in front of Ralph, beside whom was Dennis, and on the opposite seat was Lith. The human boy hit his fist on the trio's table and said, looking at Ralph dead in the eyes. "Ralph Asmodeus, I challenge you to a rank battle." Ralph put down his mango milkshake he was sipping on and looked back at the human boy. He said with a serious yet neutral face, "I am not obliged to battle." Though the toppers could be challenged for a fight and could even lose their status, they weren't obliged to do so if their merit points had a huge margin of difference compared to the person who challenged. Lith, Ralph and Dennis had very high potential, and they also did their best in whatever tests or events they participated in. Thus, their merit points were very high, allowing them to reject the requests of rank battle. They were supposed to accept one rank battle from a person who challenged first among the rest, per week, had their merit points be low. But it wasn't, so they could reject the person without a hassle. "Are you afraid you'll lose your rank, Ralph Asmodeus?" the human boy said, frowning when his request was rejected. The boy could notice hostile gazes that fell on him from the onlookers. He knew full well that challenging Ralph meant offending many people, not just Ralph, but he wasn't worried about it. He was from a reputable family and had high potential too. Adding to that, he was ranked 117. He was from the same class A1 and thus had confidence in himself that Ralph wasn't any stronger than himself. "Get lost," Ralph said to the boy. He took the croissant and took a bite from it. The boy's anger rose, slamming his hands on the table. He took Ralph's French toast and milkshake and threw it on the ground. He looked Ralph in the eyes once again and said, "Bastard. Do you think of yourself as some god? So what if you won in the flying race or became a topper? I know full well that you're trying your best to amass high merit points so that nobody can challenge you and you maintain this position. Fucker, I know you're afraid of doing rank battles. Accept it, you asshole, accept it. Tell everyone that you're nothing but a coward. A coward with slightly better looks. It's only your looks that are making you famous." Ralph looked at the guy dead in the eyes as he threw his food down. He waited to see what the reason was for this guy being so angry at him, but in the end, instead of hearing the reasons, he only received curses. Ralph was slightly angry now. Lith looked at such a scene with an amused expression. He was a bit angry at the guy who created such a mess, but he suddenly thought of something and his anger died down. He thought to himself, "Wow, is this the so-called young master from the novels that I am looking at? But wait a minute. His conflict is with Ralph and not me. Damn it, does it mean that I am not the MC of this world? Heh, just kidding lol. Being a MC would be so tiresome, I'd rather not. Good luck Ralph, your time to shine has come, my friend. Don't disappoint us, hee hee hee." "Oi bastard, what do you?" Dennis was about to ask what this guy was trying to do, but Ralph interrupted him by waving his hand and asking him to stop. Dennis was angrier than Ralph even though it was Ralph's matter. The reason being, they were having such a good time together, but this guy popped out of nowhere and ruined the atmosphere. Not only that, he even wasted Ralph's food. Dennis loved food as much as he loved to battle, and wasting food like this seemed blasphemy in his eyes. After stopping Dennis, Ralph got up from his seat and quickly held the human boy's throat. He lifted him up in the air and brought him to eye level due to Ralph being a head taller than the boy. "Bastard, let me down. Foo." Looking him dead in the eyes once again, Ralph said in a serious yet neutral tone, interrupting him, "I'll let you off this one time. An offense after this would not result in just a simple death." With the last part barely whispering near his ears. Looking at such a scene, the entire cafeteria turned silent. Some who weren't used to gore and killing, almost puked looking at such a scene, but they managed to control themselves via spells and didn't make any noise. Nobody thought that Ralph would do such a thing. Not just that, everything was over within a few seconds, let alone minutes. This guy came, ran down curses and got killed instantly. It was how this event occurred to everybody. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Report chapter comments. Blood was splattered everywhere on the ground near Lith's table. Everyone present in the cafeteria was currently looking in his direction. More precisely, they were looking at Ralph in shock. Fighting on the academy grounds wasn't allowed, let alone killing someone. Ralph had violated the rules and messed up big time. This was what was going on in everyone's heads as they looked at this scene in shock. The staff members who were watching were shocked too. They never thought that Ralph would violate one of the rules of the academy, which stated no fights anywhere on the campus apart from a select few places. It wasn't even a fight, Ralph straight up killed the guy without warning. Because of their initial shock, the staff members panicked, causing them to forget to actually call the respective authorities for this matter. "Quick! Call the respective authorities." A staff member sitting on one of the tables of the cafeteria said hurriedly to his partner present. The partner took out an emergency talisman and ripped it. The talisman was reduced to pieces and became a big round portal out of which a person wearing a black suit and a red armband walked out. The red armband indicated that the person was from the security staff. What's happening? The security staff asked the person in front of him after looking around a bit. He was a bit confused as to why someone would be in trouble in the cafeteria of the academy or cause trouble, so he asked the reason for being summoned. The people explained what had just occurred and the security staff, after listening to it, quickly rushed towards Lith's table. Lith had no reaction towards this person's death. The reason being, he knew he could be revived easily. This was just a small lesson for him. He himself had killed many in the entrance exam because of this convenience, so thus, he felt nothing when someone was killed like this. Reviving low ranks was easy and the success rate was close to 100%, but it wasn't 100. Many factors had to be taken into consideration when the revival was carried out. The factors being, magic rank, time of death, power of the soul and mental consciousness. The higher the rank of a person who is dead, the lesser would be the chance to get revived fully or without any side effects. The higher the rank of the person carrying out the revival, the higher the chances of being revived. It was impossible for a low magic rank person to revive another of a higher rank. The chances of successfully reviving someone who had the same rank as the person who carried out the revival were also very low. The time of death also mattered a lot. The soul leaves the body when one is killed. The body acts as a cage for the soul. Once one is killed, the cage is broken, letting the soul be free. The soul then dissipates. One part of it turns into energy and blends in with the world and another part enters the reincarnation cycle. It is not always balanced as to how much part would turn to energy and how much part would go into the reincarnation cycle. If more of a part went towards reincarnation, the person would have their memory intact from their previous life with even a bit of their consciousness. If more of a part was converted into energy, the person may not even reincarnate. It wasn't in an individual's hands to decide this balance. It was all totally up to fate. Thus, nobody preferred death even if resurrection was a thing. The power of the soul will decide how long it will stay intact without being dissipated. If someone is of a high rank, it may stay intact for days. However, if someone is of a lower rank, which in this case would be the human boy, the soul will dissipate within a few minutes. A mortal with no magic cultivation would have his soul dissipate within a few seconds of being killed. The last factor was mental consciousness. If someone's mental consciousness is strong, even if a good part of their soul is dissipated into energy, they will still have their memories intact after reincarnation. However, if it was weak, even if a good portion of the soul goes into reincarnation, it isn't a sure thing that they may even remember who they were in their previous life. These were one of the main factors as to why nobody wanted to die. There were also side effects present. A person may get crippled and their magic rank would halt if resurrection wasn't done properly. One may also resurrect, but with a limb permanently missing or any body part. Even with the best magic techniques, it would be impossible to heal these wounds. One could also become mentally retarded, develop demons and stay traumatized for life. While cultivating magic rank, one can turn from a rational being to an irrational monster. These factors and side effects always scared people, thus nobody wanted to be dead even in their wildest dreams. Sure, they could reincarnate with a 100% probability, but their magic rank, their hard-earned experiences, etc., may or may not be with them in the next life. The entrance exam, or more correctly, arenas where duels took place had high-grade soul-trapping barriers present. The soul wouldn't dissipate even a bit in these areas and the person could be resurrected with the help of higher-rank people who managed the duels. Lith knew all these facts and thus went all out in the entrance exam. Everyone during the entrance exam was either rank 1 or rank 2. Their consciousness as well as soul would be intact so they could revive easily there as the academy had officials of very high magic rank. Right now, it had been a few minutes since the person died, but since an academy official had arrived, there were no problems. The reason being that the person who died had a very low rank and the academy official was of a very high rank. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Report chapter comments. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse. The difference in prowess was too vast between the human boy and the academy official, thus the chances of him being revived without any problems or side effects were almost 100%. The same was the case when Rena's pack was being revived. Lucy was a king rank whereas the highest in the pack wasn't more than rank 5. Add to that, Lucy had the most superior resurrection spells and techniques in the whole world. It was handed down to her by a legendary rank, a literal god, her and Lith's mother, Lilith of Yuri. The academy official quickly cast a barrier around the body of the human boy to ensure no further dissipation of the soul occurs. Casting a restoration life spell, the body of the human boy and the blood, which was scattered all over the floor, started getting assembled. After the body was fully restored, the academy official finally cast a resurrection spell. The dissipated soul was first restored to its original state. After a complete restoration, it was channeled inside the restored body. Everyone present in the cafeteria watched this scene with great interest. No matter what, bringing a dead back to life will always be something that nobody will get bored with watching. Lith, Ralph and Dennis were too looking at this, but the three did not have much interest in it like everyone else present. They had seen it happen many times, such as in places like the entrance exam and during their training in their clans and families, thus it was a common occurrence for the three. A few minutes later, the human body started twitching and the boy opened his eyes. Getting up, he looked around and spotted Ralph. He frowned, looking at him, and just as he was about to say something, he felt a tap on his shoulder and heard someone say something to him in a deep voice. Go to the medical room. Right now. He turned towards the source of voice and found a man in a black suit wearing a red armband. Noticing this, he kept quiet and left the cafeteria to visit the medical room. The Academy official had ensured that the human boy was in a good mental state when he was resurrected. The resurrection spell he cast ensured that any memory that might provide a high stimulus and result in trauma was sealed temporarily and, for the human boy, the memories from when his girlfriend had made those remarks till his death were all sealed by the spell. Thus, he was confused and looked at Ralph with a frown, who was in front of him because he already had a dislike for him from the start. He had no idea what had happened to him or why he was on the ground, but since he was instructed by an Academy official to go to the medical room, he did so without complaining. The Academy official then turned to Lith, Ralph and Dennis. Looking at them, he sighed. The three had too high of a status outside of the Academy. Plus, judging from how Ralph was so close to Lith, the Academy official could guess that this Lust family heir was close to the heir of the royal clan of the vampires. Punishing them would be difficult for someone of his status. Nevertheless, he had to do his job, so he took out a slip from his pocket, wrote a few things on it and handed it over to Ralph. Hand this over to your teacher and she'll guide you on the rest herself. Instructing this, he left as his job was done. Too many eyes were on the trio and, since they couldn't eat peacefully now, they decided to leave. Ralph's food was wasted, so he had to buy food again. Lith and Dennis took their food to the counter to have it packed so they could take it back to the dorms and eat it. Though food was in abundance and both of them had money to buy as much food as they wanted, they refrained from doing so. Dennis loved food and this was his only reason to never waste anything he got for himself. Wasting food was the same as wasting money in such families, and children from a young age were taught not to waste food. Another reason was that there were emotional sentiments attached. A vast majority of people in his previous life couldn't fill their stomachs with even one meal. Therefore, almost everyone was taught to be grateful for the food they had on their plates, as some couldn't even afford it. Thus, everyone in his previous life, for one of these reasons, tried their best not to waste food and, even after reincarnation, such small habits stayed with Lith. Taking their food, the three walked out of the main building of the academy and reached their dorms after walking for a few minutes. Their dorm was pretty close to the main building. It was a 10-minute walking distance, and if they ran without any magic, reaching the main building within 2 to 3 minutes would be easy. The three seated themselves on the couch in the lounge and placed their food on the glass table. Ralph then took out his phone and texted their teacher to come down if she was free, as he had something important to give her. The three then went on to chat and eat their food, livening up the atmosphere along the way, and, just like that, half an hour passed. Teacher still hasn't come down. Should we call her? Ralph looked at Lith and Dennis and asked. Lith looked at the two and then said, if she didn't see your text, she won't answer your phone either. Either teacher is busy with her phone all day or her phone is dead or in silent mode. I think we need to ring that bell or go to her floor to call for her. So, who's going? Previous chapter. So who's going? Dennis and Ralph didn't say anything and stared at Lith for a good few seconds. Lith sighed and said, fine, I'll go. Your Highness, we didn't say anything. Dennis shrugged and said, to which Ralph nodded his head in approval. Lith didn't argue with them about this. These two tried to avoid their teacher as much as possible, because teacher teased them so much that they couldn't handle it. Except Lith, he was almost a professional in the aspect of not getting teased. His mother had trained him well and, in his opinion, his teacher, Arya, wasn't anywhere near close to the level of his mother. Taking the stairs, Lith reached the 4th floor and was now standing in front of a door. Behind the door lay his teacher's dorm. It wasn't correct to call any of the dorms in the building dorms because they were more like a complete apartment. Add on to that, only one person stayed on one floor, with the floor itself being pretty big. It was only called a dormitory because it was attached to the academy, so only students and teachers could use it. Lith contemplated whether he should just barge in or come next time, but after thinking for a bit, he decided to go inside. Ralph had created a mess today by violating the rules of the academy. The punishment was pretty severe for such a thing, but him not being punished yet meant something was either wrong or they were still deciding on it. Ralph needed his teacher's help urgently, that was what Lith thought. Opening the door and coming inside, the scene Lith saw made him so shocked he stopped in his tracks. The living room was a mess. There was food, clothes, and even alcohol messily scattered around. In this mess, Arya was sleeping in a very inelegant and unladylike position on the sofa currently in the center of the living room. One of her legs was on top of the sofa's armrest and the other was dangling down. One of her hands was holding an alcohol bottle and, as for the other, it was inside her panties. She was currently only in her black laced panties and a light blue loose half top. She didn't even have a bra on, and her top also didn't help with covering her boobs, which were the most perfect ones he ever came across. They were neither too small nor too big, just the perfect size with a perfect shape. Even though Lith had seen it before, it was only when she was clothed, and now that he had a good look of it, he was right about Arya having the most perfect sized breasts he had ever seen. Though they were perfect, they had their own charm and it couldn't be compared to his mother's or sister's. There was alcohol near her mouth which seemed to have dried up, shattering her image of an elegant and domineering teacher that she was. Lith, looking at this scene, wondered how things could have become such a mess. Though his teacher was half naked in front of him, making him feel hot just looking at such a scene, he controlled his urges and his lewd thoughts. Having been around his mother and sister, whom he considered as the most beautiful, he had gotten well versed in controlling his urges. Had it not been the case, he would have already had thoughts about taking advantage of such a situation. Then he would have later hated himself for doing such a thing, as he was a person who believed in consent. Lith was raised well by his mother and sister. Thus, he would never do non-consensual stuff. Lith walked towards Arya and first, he corrected her top and covered her breasts. Next, he took the alcohol bottle from her hand and placed it on the table. He then removed her hand from her panties and draped it over his shoulder and made her get up from the sofa. He then put her in a piggyback position and carried her to her bedroom. But as he arrived there, he saw the bedroom to be in a mess too. He sighed and took her downstairs to his own floor. Going inside his own bedroom, he placed Arya on the bed. Lith cast a cleaning spell on her and cleaned her face as well as her whole body without actually touching her. He then covered her with a blanket and left the room after closing the door and walked down to the ground floor. Meeting the two again, Lith said with a neutral face, "Teacher is sleeping. We should talk to her once she wakes up." The two nodded their heads in understanding and continued to do the work they were previously doing, that is, playing a game together. After Lith left, Ralph and Dennis started playing red hands together. How it worked was, they would stack their hands alternately on top of each other and the person whose hand rested at the bottom would remove it and slap the hand which was on the top. The one who couldn't bear the pain anymore would lose the game and would have to do whatever the winner asked him to do. Ralph wanted to have Dennis solve riddles and puzzles which they got as homework because he wanted to see his suffering face. He knew he hated it, so he wanted to see just that. Dennis, on the other hand, had completely different thoughts. He wanted to have Ralph get together with a girl and take her as his GF. He knew Ralph didn't like such stuff, so he too, like Ralph, wanted to see the suffering face of his friend. They both didn't know each other's thoughts as it would only be revealed once there was a loser or else the players would back out even before playing the game. Lith looked at the two and smiled. He sat on his knees at one edge of the table just like the other two and stacked his hands in between. He looked at the two, smiled wickedly and said, "I am playing too now. Don't back out like cowards." "Heh. Who's a coward?" Ralph smiled and replied to Lith. "Your Highness, although you are indeed strong, you underestimate us. Don't blame us later when you feel the pain, he. Dennis replied. Lith raised an eyebrow and replied back, "Ho? Challenging me? All right. We shall see."